All right, let's dive right into this explainer and unpack the staggering, honestly almost unbelievable story of the Medellin cartel. Today, we're looking at the rise and fall of a man whose very name became completely synonymous with the global drug trade, Pablo Escobar. You know, this is a story of unprecedented wealth, ruthless ambition, and ultimately a bloody downfall that completely reshaped global crime. So let's just get right into it and look at the absolute empire he built. To understand this empire, you really have to look at the numbers, and they are wild. At their peak in the 1980s, the Medellin cartel wasn't just a gang. No, it was a massive international logistics conglomerate. I mean, they controlled a staggering 80% of the US cocaine market. 80%! That level of market dominance gave Escobar an estimated net worth of $30 billion, actually earning him a spot on Forbes magazine's list of the wealthiest people on Earth. It was an influx of cash so massive, it literally created problems that most legitimate businesses couldn't even fathom. Think about it like this. When you're pulling in up to $420 million a week, traditional banking just isn't an option anymore. And that creates a comical yet entirely real logistical nightmare. Get this, the cartel spent $2,500 every single month just on rubber bands, just to bundle the physical bills. And it gets crazier. They literally had to write off 10% of their cash annually because rats were eating it in the warehouses where they hid it. Rats! At one point, the plane Escobar was using to fly currency back from the US became too small, so he just went out and purchased a larger airplane strictly for the purpose of flying pallets of cash. It's a level of wealth that is, frankly, completely absurd.
So that brings us to part one, brains and the brawn. Let's look at the true masterminds behind all of this.
Because here's the thing, it's a super common misconception that Escobar was this lone genius pulling all the strings. Pablo Escobar did not build this massive criminal empire by himself. While Pablo was absolutely the boss and the front man, the guy who brought the charisma, the terrifying capacity for violence, the public image, and those wild political ambitions, his cousin, Gustavo Gaviria, was the real brains of the operation. Gustavo was the shadowy mastermind actually running the business day to day. He was the one handling the complex logistics, forging the global contacts, and applying a really sharp financial genius behind the scenes. While Pablo wanted power and the spotlight, Gustavo, well, he just wanted the money and preferred to stay totally in the shadows. Together, they were a lethally effective combination.
And Gustavo's genius is perfectly captured in their smuggling methodology. They didn't just fly planes full of powder like you might see in the movies. No, they'd smuggle raw coca paste from Peru and Bolivia into Colombia, and then refine it in these massive hidden jungle laboratories. But step 3 is where it gets truly ingenious. They would literally soak liquid cocaine directly into shipments of blue jeans to easily evade customs. You heard that right, blue jeans. Once the denim arrived in the United States, cartel chemists would extract the drug right back out of the fabric. I mean, it was a highly sophisticated, multinational supply chain operating entirely under the radar.
Moving right along to part 2, plata o plomo, which translates to silver or lead. You see, when you control a multi-billion-dollar illicit market, enforcement becomes just as crucial as distribution. And for Escobar, enforcement was brutally absolute. This infamous philosophy, plata o plomo, forced literally everyone in Escobar's path, politicians, judges, police officers, to make a deadly choice. You either accept the silver bribe and look the other way, or you take a lead bullet. There was no third option, guys. This simple, terrifying ultimatum is exactly how Escobar corrupted the highest levels of the Colombian state. And if his bribes weren't accepted immediately, well, he didn't just kill his targets, he was known to go after their families too. Yet, what makes this whole story so complex is the wild duality of his public image. While he was literally terrorizing the state, to the poor in his hometown of Medellin, he cultivated this very strategic Robin Hood persona. He used a fraction of his immense wealth to build soccer fields, sponsor health programs, and even construct entirely new housing neighborhoods for the impoverished. Now, he obviously wasn't doing this purely out of the goodness of his heart, right? He was essentially buying fierce, unquestioning loyalty from the streets. In Medellin, he was known as Don Pablo, a protector of the poor, and that grassroots support made him incredibly difficult for the authorities to touch. But of course, that couldn't last forever. Let's look at part 3, the cartel goes to war. State versus syndicate. That untouchable status was bound to break. His hubris eventually peaked in 1982 when he actually entered politics, getting elected as an alternate member of Colombia's Congress. The guy genuinely dreamed of being president, but when Justice Minister Rodrigo Lara Bonilla publicly exposed his criminal ties and pushed him out of politics, it triggered a devastating and bloody war. Just look at how fast this escalates.
In just 5 years, this went from a gang conflict to an all-out assault on a sovereign nation. In 1984, they assassinated Justice Minister Laura Bonilla. By 1989, the violence reached an absolute fever pitch. Escobar ordered the assassination of presidential candidate Luis Carlos Galán. Then, in a horrific display of narco-terrorism, the cartel planted a bomb on Avianca Flight 203, trying to kill another politician, tragically killing all 107 civilians on board. Weeks later, a truck bomb devastated the DAS intelligence building in Bogotá, killing 52 more. Escobar literally turned Colombia into the murder capital of the world, all just to force the government to ban extradition to the United States. So what happens when the king loses his brains? This brings us to a massively pivotal turning point in our timeline. The government, completely backed into a corner, finally struck back hard. In August 1990, Colombian police tracked down and killed Gustavo Gaviria in Medellin. And remember, Gustavo was the brains, right? He was the stabilizing force, the logistical architect of the whole operation. When Gustavo died, the fragile structure of the Medellin cartel completely shattered. Which leads us straight into part 4, the bloody downfall. These are Escobar's final days. Without his business partner around to rein him in or manage the day-to-day finances, Escobar's hold on the cartel began to spiral rapidly out of control. The calculated, careful business of smuggling was entirely overtaken by sheer, desperate violence. In 1991, feeling the heat, Escobar actually agreed to surrender to authorities. But get this, he did it on the totally absurd condition that he served time in La Catedral, his own custom-built luxury resort overlooking Medellin. Calling it a prison is a joke. It had a casino, a spa, a nightclub, and a football field. His own hand-picked men guarded him. And most importantly, he just kept running the cartel from inside. But when he went too far and murdered 2 of his own associates inside La Catedral, the government had finally had enough and moved to transfer him to a real military prison. Hearing this, Escobar simply walked out the back door and went on the run in 1992. This escape triggered a massive 16-month manhunt. And let me tell you, it wasn't just the law chasing him anymore. He was hunted by the US DEA and special operators, working right alongside the Colombian military's elite search block. But honestly, perhaps the most dangerous threat came from a shadow group called Los Pepes. These were ruthless vigilantes, mostly former associates and right-wing paramilitaries heavily funded by the rival Cali cartel. Los Pepes basically mirrored Escobar's own violent tactics. They attacked his property, his lawyers, and his family, systematically dismantling his entire support network. The walls were completely closing in. It all finally came to an abrupt end, the day after his 44th birthday. On December 2, 1993, the authorities utilized electronic tracking technology to trace a phone call Escobar made to his family. It turned out he had been hiding out in a totally normal, middle-class residential neighborhood in Medellin called Los Olivos for over a month. As the elite search block breached the doors of the hideout, a chaotic gunfight immediately broke out. Escobar and his final remaining bodyguard attempted a really desperate escape, scrambling out a window and across the terracotta rooftops of the neighborhood. But there was literally nowhere left to run. Escobar was shot in the leg, the torso, and finally through the ear, dying instantly right there on the rooftop, in the very city he once completely ruled. So, to wrap this all up, while Escobar's death undoubtedly marked the end of the Medellin cartel as a unified powerhouse, the reality on the ground was a lot messier. It actually empowered groups like Los Pepes, accelerated the rise of the rival Cali cartel, and permanently decentralized the global drug trade. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer today. But as we look at the fragmented, highly competitive trafficking networks of the modern world, it really leaves us to wonder, when you remove the architect of an empire, do you actually destroy the system, or do you just force it to evolve into something even harder to catch?